Hello all, I'm Wadabra. Welcome back to Adastra. In the previous episode, after winning the second trial, due to Alexios telling the triumvirates about Cassius's plan to strip them of their power, which in turn would remove the only system of checks and balances Adastra's political system seems to have, and since Cassius doesn't stand a chance in the final trial by combat, it's assumed that Amicus will now be emperor, and the extended royal family is invited out to Adastra City. Or at least the district where the triumvirates are being housed. The rest of the city is still in a bit of an uproar about Cassius losing, despite giving the more entertaining performance. While out on the streets, Marco and Neferu observe a sickly wolf child who gives Marco a wilted flower. Then Marco and Neferu have a brief conversation about how, against all odds, Cassius may have made some valid points about the inequality on their moon. After a few hours, the group settles down for dinner. And while talking with Amicus, Marco suggests that he should consider his sister, Virginia, for the position of his chief advisor. And Amicus admits that she's a good fit for the position, but he's worried that the people would lose further respect for him if he's seen not only as a tail raiser, but also as someone taking orders from a female, because sexism. Toward the end of the meal, Amicus asks Marco an important question. While still being willing to uphold his promise to return Marco to Earth, he asks if Marco would be willing to stay on Adastra with him, even after he becomes emperor. And after thinking about it for a moment, Marco kinda sort of agrees, with two stipulations. One, that he still needs to return home to let his family know that he's alive, and two, if Amicus can somehow correct the illegality of his presence on the moon. Then Marco becomes violently sick, is racked by seizures, and slips into a coma. This is when those elements of cosmic horror that I mentioned way back in the first part begin to rear its ugly head. During his coma, Marco interacts with someone whom we can likely assume is a monitor, and he tells Marco that the parents had not anticipated this turn of events, and it threatens to ruin their plans unless they intervene. So the parents patch him up, metaphorically slap him on the ass with vague encouragement, and tells him to finish Mira's work. Not the most comforting thing to be told, considering the stories about her. So that's the recap. Remember to like and share this video to help me appease the almighty YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. And as always, content warnings and a link to my Patreon can be found in the description below. Let's get started. This time, coming to feels real, and I immediately know I'm not in a dream. I smell lavender. Amicus? My eyes feel like they're glued shut, and I have to rub at them to get them to fully open. The first thing I see is the sky, the planet Anchorus and the moon Torque, both of them glowing brightly. I stare at the two floating orbs for a while, waiting for things to fall into place as to why I'm out here. I'm laying on something hard, like concrete, and I feel a soft but weighty thing on my chest. My hands are curled around it, and I lift it slowly to have a look, even though it feels like a 50-pound dumbbell. Flowers. Flowers with a fair bit of lavender mixed in. Slowly, I start to turn my head again, and I get the feeling of heavy weights attached to my body. I somehow manage it though, and immediately see that I'm in the amphitheater. At the same time, I see more flowers, and realize that they're arranged all around me in a circle. Moving my head around also makes me realize that there's something scratchy and prickly on my head. Still struggling with my heavy hand, I reach up and grab at it. I lift it from my head and hold it in front of my face, my eyes taking a few moments to focus to find out that it's a wreath, pink flowers woven into the twigs. I finally drop my arm to the side, getting too tired to hold it up, and I watch as the wreath lazily rolls a few feet away. The movement sends a wave of tingling through my body, but it fades quickly. The heavy weakness is also starting to fade, but I'm more worried about how I got here and why I'm covered in flowers. From what I can tell, I'm in the gardens, though a part of it I haven't been to before. I close my eyes, trying to remember how I got here. Amicus, the trial of rhetoric, the restaurant, being sick. Again, I lift my arm, though it's easier this time, and I look at the skin. It's covered in crusty, yellowish scabs, though they don't hurt. I don't know why, but I get the feeling that the skin underneath is completely healed. I try to think again. I do remember throwing up on Cassius, but after that, just terrible dreams. Did they heal me somehow? Is this flower thing a part of that? I'm feeling some of my strength returning, so I force myself into a sitting position, joints popping and muscles stiff. Still, with every movement, things get easier. I do get lightheaded though, and I have to sit there for a moment, looking around again, wondering where Amicus is. He'd sounded so desperate and sad the last I heard him. I need to show him that I'm okay now. At least, I think I am. I slowly push myself up, listening to the gunshot cracks of my knees as if I hadn't used them for days. I stand unsteadily in the center of the square, looking around at the circle of flowers. I'm startled when I turn and see a wolf behind me, but it's just a sculpture. A male wolf decked out in armor, both his paws raised to the sky. He's got a bunch of flowers woven around his wrists, and on his head, too. I wait a few moments, listening for anyone that might be nearby. All I hear are the insects around me. So I start to move toward the path that I know leads toward the palace. Although I'm pretty sure I'm not dreaming now, this eerie scenario has me questioning that. The whole situation is surreal. All of the things that I remember happening last feel so distant. Despite spending all of my time on Adastra trying to be covert, I find myself longing to find someone, anyone really. I just need to know what's happened. And pretty soon, I do find someone. His back is to me, stooped over, fur almost ghostly in the glow of the garden lights. The cat busies himself with some flowers, a pair of metal clippers in his paws. As I get closer, I can hear him humming just above the noise of his busy snipping. I'm just opening my mouth when I see his ears perk. "Cass, you know I don't like these games." Alex turns to face me, a knowing smile on his lips. That quickly disappears the second he sees me, though, replaced by a look of complete shock. "Ah." Whatever he was trying to say doesn't seem to want to come out, and instead he just stands there, gaping at me. Hey. I can barely talk, my voice rasping out like sandpaper on wood. I take a step forward, and that's when Alex finally reacts, jumping almost a foot into the air in a backwards motion, putting space between us as he yelps. What? How? He stutters and stumbles over his words. I've seen Alex flustered before, but never like this. There's real fear in his eyes as he stumbles against some bushes. I wonder if he's just going to take off running, but instead he stands there, quivering as he holds the clippers up in front of his chest, as if contemplating using them as a weapon. I raise my hands reassuringly. Hey, Alex, it's me. I cough a few times, trying to clear my throat. I see Alex's ears twitch at the sound, and he slowly lowers the clippers, though he moves to the side away from the bush, giving himself a clear path to the palace.
Marco? But how?
He's staring at me like what he's seeing is impossible.
Oh, what?
I'm regaining my voice slowly but surely.
What's happening?
Alex finally seems to get a hold of himself, fur slowly laying flat again as he eyes me, looking almost suspicious.
I could ask you the same thing.
This catches me off guard. Why?
Well...
Alex looks around before focusing on me again, tilting his head as if to look at me from a different angle.
You were dead.
Dead?
Well, not completely, but you were in a coma that we were told you would not wake up from.
Oh. I look down at myself, as if to confirm that I am indeed alive and well. Aside from the patchy scabs all over my arms and legs, I feel okay, aside from the grogginess.
I thought the doctor healed me.
Alex's ears perk.
Doctor?
I think there was a doctor. I heard him when I was brought back here. Alex's eyes narrow.
Amicus told us you were vegetative before he arrived. How did you hear him?
I don't know. I might have dreamed it. I was really out of it.
If you were still conscious when he arrived, he should have been able to halt the damage caused by the virus. Who was the doctor?
With every passing second, I regain more and more of my wits, and Alex's demeanor is confusing me. He thought I was dead, and instead of being happy, I feel like he's interrogating me. That's also when I realize something else. Wait, you all think I'm dead?
Well, not me anymore, obviously. This is all very strange. How did you survive, exactly?
Now the cat is starting to annoy me, and I look past him toward the palace, the situation finally dawning on me. Where's Amicus? The cat is quiet for a moment, as if contemplating something, then quirks his head.
I'm not sure. He's been here and there, though I haven't seen him for at least a day.
I walk past the cat toward the palace, realizing what sort of state the wolf might be in.
Where are you going? I'm very happy to see that you are well. This is all just very sudden and unexpected.
I ignore Alex, not really in the mood to figure out why he's acting the way he is. He's making me feel like I'm still dreaming. So I walk quickly, and I'm relieved that he doesn't follow me. The wave of cool air that hits me as I enter the palace is a welcome feeling, and I find myself grateful to be back. Despite having apparently been here the whole time, it really does feel like I've been away for weeks. I pick up the pace as I head toward Amicus's room, practically jogging. I have to let him know that I'm okay. The short distance to his room seems like it takes longer than it ever has before, and I'm glad that I don't run into anyone else on the way. That interaction with Alex was weird, and I don't need a repeat of that right now. I finally make it to his door, and I immediately hear muffled chattering behind it. I don't hesitate, though, and I press my hand to the panel. The door slides open, and instead of the usual blast of even colder air I would often get from Amicus's room, it's stuffy, warm, and smells a little bit musky. The lights are dimmed, and my heart sinks when I see the empty bed. I linger in the doorway, though, something feeling off. The droning chatter is calm, giving what sounds like a monologue on the history of some past emperor. I see wine bottles too, mostly bunched together on top of the bedside table, but there are also a few laying here and there on the floor. Amicus? I call out, starting to become afraid of what I might find. I take a few tentative steps into the room. Then I hear a loud snore, and instantly, the worry gripping my chest starts to release. I'd recognize that sound anywhere. I hurry over to the other side of the bed, where I find my wolf splayed out on the floor, a wine bottle next to his head, only in his underwear. He's clearly asleep, or passed out, muzzle hanging wide open as another thunderous snore shakes the floor. Amicus! I crouch down next to him, resting a hand on his chest, trying to shake him awake. His only response is a few more broken snorts before drooling out the side of his muzzle. I switch to patting at his face, then grabbing his muzzle and shaking it around, noticing how crusty the fur is, something I've never felt on Amicus before. Amicus! I consider slapping him like I've seen people do in the movies. Then I see the bottle next to his head and decide to go for another approach. I snatch it up and hurry to the bathroom. I hold the bottle under the faucet for a good 5 seconds, letting it fill up with soapy water to the halfway point before I hurry back out into the room. Meanwhile, Com doesn't seem to notice me, droning on about how this particular emperor was known for having a fondness of orchids. I crouch down next to Amicus again, hesitating for a second as I wonder if maybe I should call Kato. Probably not Kato. Neferu, maybe? Just in case Amicus is actually in trouble. I don't know how much a wolf can drink before it can kill them, but the sheer amount of bottles laying around the room worries me. I decide to just go ahead with my plan, and I upend the bottle over Amicus's face. It pours directly into his nose, and he immediately chokes, turning his head this way and that to avoid the stream of bubbly water. I have a moment to wonder if drowning him is the best approach before he suddenly sits up, pawing at his face. Gah! The wolf covers his eyes, and it's only then that I realize how irritating the soap might actually be for them. Shit, sorry. Should I get some water from the shower so you can rinse your eyes out? Amicus freezes, still covering his face, then slowly lowers his paws to reveal his bleary, bloodshot eyes. He stares at me in a way that he never has before. It's kind of surprised, like Alex had been, but rather than fear, Amicus simply looks empty, numb. Are you okay? I reach out, but Amicus turns his head away. Away with you, ghost! Enough of your torment! He keeps his head turned away, eyes closed. Ghost? Amicus, it's me! I reach out and grab his face, and that seems to shock him as he jumps and turns to look me right in the eye. I can tell that he's drunk. Very drunk. But there's an extra distant look in his eyes that I don't like. Amicus, what are you on? Did you take something? I hold his big head steady, feeling the fullness of his cheeks in my hands, looking into his familiar eyes, no matter how glazed and unfocused they are. Then I find myself throwing my arms around his neck and leaning into his body, the reality of the situation crashing down on me all at once. Amicus gasps into my ear, as if my touch is suddenly making him realize that I'm real, that I'm here. Clumsily, he starts to stand up, pulling me up with him. It's difficult because I don't let go, almost getting lifted off my feet before I settle on letting go for just a moment to hug him lower around his body, pressing my head into his chest, hearing his heart hammering inside. Finally, he's able to get a grip on me, and push me away despite my intention to cling to him forever. He holds me at arm's length, staring at me. I clutch his paws on my shoulders, staring up at him, feeling my eyes start to water.
Is this possible? No, please. I can't handle another hallucination.
His expression keeps morphing from hope and awe to devastation. I feel his paws grip into my shoulders tightly, almost painfully, as if to make sure I'm real. It's me! I woke up in the garden for some reason. I'm okay. I want to hug him again, but he keeps holding me away, looking me up and down, pushing my hair back and feeling my crusty skin.
But how?
I don't know. I just remember having crazy dreams. Then I was in the garden. As I'm talking, I think Amicus is finally believing it's me. And I notice that his body is starting to sway in a worrisome manner. Amicus? I reach out to steady him, but as I do, his eyes roll back, and I realize there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to keep a wolf over twice my weight from toppling over. I try anyway, wrapping my arms around him as Amicus falls backwards, his bulk pulling me down with him as he falls back first onto the bedside table, sending bottles flying while his upper back and head smashes into the wall. My fall is absorbed by his much softer front, but the sound is loud, the room shaking and probably waking up the entire palace. Waking the wolf up the second time is a lot easier, probably because he'd fainted rather than passing out from too much wine. We're at least able to move onto the bed where Amicus sits cross-legged, pulling me onto his lap and just holding me there, his paws moving around my body, still trying to make sure I'm real. For a moment, we don't talk. The wolf just presses his nose to my hair and breathes in deeply. I feel a little self-conscious, knowing I must not smell very good right now, but that doesn't seem to bother Amicus as he goes on pressing his nose to my head and neck, taking in my scent. Finally, he does speak, but it's one word.
How?
I turn my head toward the wolf, resting my cheek against his neck. I don't know. I don't really even know what's happened to me.
You got sick. So sick. You were having convulsions, brain and nerve damage. It was terrible.
Amicus's arms tighten around me. His voice, normally deep and strong, now sounding weak and broken. This statement worries me, though, and I have to wonder if I really am better. There seems to be patches missing from my memory, and I do feel different, like I'm not fully myself, but I don't really want to think about it right now. I think I remember a little bit of that. I lift my arms up, showing Amicus the shiny, crusty scabs on my arm.
It was aviopox. I can't believe I didn't consider the possibility of disease and illness for you. I'm just so used to the idea of any new arrival on Adastra going through that process. Obviously, we did it a bit differently.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not even sure I'd have you do it. I don't know if you'd react differently to those vaccinations. Each species has their own customized cocktail. And aviopox isn't included in the vaccination set. It's such a mild virus. We'd never seen anyone react to it the way you did, even other primates.
I think back to how quickly I became sick, how quickly I almost died. I notice Amicus looking down at me again, and I look back up at him. What? Amicus shakes his head.
I'm just still trying to make sure you're here. That you're real. I'm afraid if I let you go, if I even look away, you'll disappear.
His arms tighten around me again, squeezing a huff of breath out of me. I'm here, I promise.
Well, I've had a lot of hallucinations. Too many stress tablets, I think.
Stress tablets?
Yes, quite a few of them, in fact.
With wine?
Oh, yes.
Amicus! I don't really know what these stress tablets are, but I imagine mixing space Xanax with alcohol is a horrible idea. Amicus doesn't seem bothered by my reprimand, though, instead just snuggling closer to me, his crusted face fur prickling against my skin.
I love you, Marco.
I get that familiar swooping feeling in my chest, like I'm on a roller coaster. I clutch onto his arms. I love you too. Amicus sighs and sets his chin on my head.
I thought I'd missed the opportunity to say it. I still can't believe you're real.
Well, I am. I promise.
But I still don't understand how. This shouldn't be possible. You were declared to be in a permanent coma, no brain activity. I had to set you out in the garden and only hope for a miracle.
Miracle? Amicus lets out a shaky sigh, running his fingers through my hair.
When a sapient falls into such a state, we simply let them fade away in a peaceful setting, or possibly recover if the parent allows it. I sat out there for a while, but couldn't bear to see you waste away, so I came back to my room to drink and prepare for the emperorship.
I imagine Amicus laying those flowers around me, and I feel my heart break a little.
Did the parents come to you? Is that why you're here? I had hope that they would.
I shrug. I really can't remember much.
It does not matter. My prayers were answered. Praise the gods.
Amicus starts to smother me again with his hugging. Little bits of imagery from my dreams are starting to come back to me. Something that happened in space. Someone talking to me.
And judging by the only human I know, your people are full of surprises. But we can figure it out later. I just want to hold you right now.
Okay.
And Marco?
Yeah?
Please try to avoid mentioning that I lost consciousness when I saw you.
Of course. So we sit there for a while longer while Amicus just sort of cuddles with me. After about an hour, we finally decide to move to the shower, considering the state we're both in. We shower together, taking turns scrubbing each other. The hot water really brings life back into my limbs, and those worrying tingles have faded to the point where I'm barely noticing them now. Amicus gently rubs at my crusted skin, and we're both surprised to see it come away, exposing new, unblemished skin underneath.
Incredible! I never knew humans healed at such a rate.
Yeah. I don't know if that's really the case, and my mind continues to wander back to those vague, hard-to-remember dreams I was having. Meanwhile, Amicus leans back against the wall as I rub soap into his front, smiling gently as I lather up his chest. I can tell he's still fairly drunk, but that doesn't stop his cock from becoming fully erect between us, which I just pretend not to notice. His eyes widen as he suddenly realizes something.
Wait, did anyone else notice you?
I pause, both my hands cupping his sizable pecs. Yeah, actually. Alex was in the garden, and I talked to him.
Just Alex?
Yeah. Amicus seems to relax a bit.
What did he say?
Just seemed really surprised.
Unsurprising.
But he was acting a little weird. Amicus shrugs.
He keeps things to himself for the most part. I'd be worried if you ran into Cato, or Cassius especially. I need to think of a way to explain this to them. This Simeon guy's is becoming harder to keep up.
I'm about to mention more about Alex's demeanor, but that's when Amicus just starts hugging me again, his dick hot and firm, crushing between us as he does. I don't care though, and Amicus doesn't seem to either.
I don't understand any of this right now, but as long as it's real, I don't care.
It feels so good like this. His wet fur slicked down tightly to his thick body, which presses against me perfectly. Amicus finally shuts off the water, and we're blasted with hot air. I'm dried in less than a minute, and I stumble out to try and fix my poofy hair in the mirror, while Amicus stands in the shower stall for a little while longer. After another few minutes, I watch him step out and come up behind me to nuzzle my ears, embracing me once again. He really can't keep his paws off me, but I completely understand why. He starts nudging me out into the bedroom before turning me around to face him, lowering his face to mine. And I finally realize where this is going. It feels so sudden, especially after everything that's happened. I think we could use more time to adjust. But I kiss back anyway. We've kissed a few times before, but only with our lips. Now his tongue presses against my mouth, and I only hesitate for a moment before letting it in, his thinner, longer tongue caressing mine with a surprising nimble strength. I thought it would be kind of hard to make out with the way his muzzle is shaped, but Amicus makes it happen, his lips clamping around my mouth as he kisses deeper. I'm amazed at how bold he's being, and I wonder if maybe it's because he's still pretty inebriated. He cradles my head gently, walking me backwards slowly, his cock occasionally poking against my groin and thighs until I'm up against the bed. Gently, he lowers me down to rest on my back, both paws coming to press on either side of my shoulders while he looms over me, grinning before he pauses.
Is this okay?
I think. I mean, are you okay? We can wait until tomorrow when you're less drunk. He grins again.
I've been wanting to do this for so long, to show you how much I love you.
Amicus leans down, nuzzling my neck.
I thought I'd missed that chance. I can't tell you how dark these past 3 days have been for me. I ran out of tears yesterday.
Amicus looks away for a moment.
I'm not going to miss that chance now.
I reach up and hold his head steady again before I lean up to kiss him. This may be alcohol-fueled, it may be sudden, but after everything that's happened, after what Amicus has been through, I want us to be able to do this before anything else happens. He huffs loudly through his nose, the burst of hot air tickling my face as he falls to the bed, rolling to the side to pull me up on top of him. His massive, soft body cushions me like it always does, rising and falling with his quickened breaths. His kissing becomes more aggressive as he lets out little growls and snarls. All of the reservations I had about having sex with an alien wolf fall away at that moment. After everything that's happened, and especially after almost dying, I just don't care anymore. We grind against each other, both of us hard now as we just explore the other's body, his giant paws sliding up and down my sides while I do the same to him. Eventually, I sit up, straddling his waist, looking down at him, just sort of taking him in. Again, he has that silly grin on his face, his paws on my thighs, kneading at the skin and muscle.
You're beautiful.
That makes me laugh. Beautiful? Well, you're adorable. Amicus raises an eyebrow.
I'm not sure that's the correct description for the next emperor of Adastra.
I lean forward and aggressively rub at his belly, his weak spot, immediately neutralizing his snark as his paws flop back above his head, eyes almost rolling with pleasure before he squeezes them shut. He writhes and arches around my hands, leaning into the rub as I slide my hands up to his chest, then all the way down to his lower stomach. When that happens, I feel his dick jump against my rear, making me realize how hard I'm getting him. I'm getting the same way as I make the strong, thick body below me undulate with pleasure. His head rolls from side to side, tongue flopping back and forth, and when I giggle at him, that seems to finally bring him out of his trance. He growls and grips my arms.
That is cheating.
With that, he rolls me over, easily reversing our positions as he mounts me, pinning my hands over my head with one paw. With his other, he tries to rub at my stomach, which makes me laugh and squirm until he finally lets go. That doesn't work on primates.
Seems like it worked well to me.
He lets go of my hands and leans down to nuzzle at my face, his cold nose exploring my chin, cheeks, and forehead. He then starts to adjust his position before he suddenly stops, looking up at me. His ears lower, and I can tell that he's embarrassed. What?
Do you humans, for males, do you go through the rear?
Oh. I think about that. That would be the expected route, but looking at Amicus's length, the wolf follows my gaze and looks even more embarrassed.
We don't have to. I don't want to hurt you, of course.
I prop myself up on my elbows, looking between the two of us. Yeah, maybe some other time? You're kinda thick. Amicus smirks.
Thank you.
He starts adjusting himself again, squatting as he sort of waddles up so that our dicks are parallel to each other.
Maybe this?
He slowly lowers himself until we make contact. The feeling and sight of it is electric, the hot flesh of his cock pressing against mine firmly. Out of sight, I feel his furry balls come to rest on top of mine, the soft forms molding together easily. Amicus pauses there, smiling down at me gently as he rests both paws on either side of my head.
You'll have to excuse my ignorance. I'm not sure how humans might copulate.
He wiggles his hips, causing his length to slide from side to side on top of mine, and I have to stifle a gasp. I think it's about the same, from what I saw. Amicus frowns for a moment as he realizes what exactly it is I'm referencing, but quickly recovers as he leans down to kiss me once again. Once he's finished, I smile back up at him. But yeah, this is fine. I rest my hands on his knees, noticing how he's balancing most of his considerable weight in a squat. Are you comfortable, though? That looks like a workout.
Kata works me a lot harder than this, Marco.
Amicus frowns again as he realizes how that could be interpreted.
I mean, he makes me do a lot of squatting exercises. I'll just consider this extra practice.
I reach out and feel up the wolf's chest and belly while he speaks, again marveling at how powerful it all is. Amicus chuckles and arches out a bit to give me a better feel, taking deep breaths and puffing out his chest. He shudders as I rub at his nipples, the nubs of flesh hardening instantly.
So, now that you're comfortable...
Tentatively, Amicus reaches down with his left paw and carefully lifts my length from my stomach to press against his. This time, I let out a little gasp. Being squeezed together like this, sending a jolt of pleasure up from my dick, through my body, and into my brain. Immediately, my skin breaks out in goosebumps as I shiver to Amicus's touch. His gentle but all-enveloping paw feeling so good right now. He starts off slowly at first, beginning to jerk us both off in small, quick motions. I can tell that he's being overly careful with me, so I jerk my hips up against him, encouraging more. He seems to get the hint, and he picks up speed, giving the two of us deeper, faster strokes that make me grip at the bed sheets on either side of me, staring at the ceiling as I let out soft pants and groans. Amicus gets more and more into it, already leaking all over my own dick as he pumps his paw, biceps bulging with the effort. I've been jerked off by others before, but Amicus's paw really is something else. Of course, it's big, but the soft, squishy pads on his palm and fingers add to the pleasure, giving me a texture I've never felt before. The wolf starts to thrust his powerful hips into the stroking, making the bed squeak and shake. Again, his strength is evident in how he practically moves my entire body with each thrust. The idea that he's holding back, turning me on even more. I feel his heavy sack bouncing on top of mine. My knees jerk up with each thrust, and each time they do, I feel his large rear end slam up against them, its furry form tight and clenched.
I'm getting close.
He pants out over my head, a drop of drool dribbling down onto my cheek. I start to thrust up against him in earnest, wanting to match his climax. At this point, we're almost bouncing on the bed with how hard the wolf is humping against me, forgetting his strength in the moment. I don't mind, though, not really caring how sore I'm going to be tomorrow as the pleasure overtakes me. It hits me all at once, and I reach up to put a hand against his face, letting him know, and he takes that as his signal to let go as well. I feel it in his entire body, the wolf tensing up, muscles tightening, standing out through the fur of his thighs, stomach, and chest. I see his face then as he balances on the edge of climax, eyes wide and looking toward the ceiling, mouth hanging open, a look of pure awe. I feel it in his cock, too, and at the same time, we're both pushed over the edge. I groan, something I don't usually do, but the buildup, the situation, the feeling is all too much. It's drowned out by the sound that Amicus makes, though. He practically sags over me, letting out a bassy, rumbling moan of ecstasy. Hearing the masculine, deep voice making a sound of such pleasure spurs on another spasm from my cock. I think the same happens to Amicus because he suddenly hunches forward again, muzzle right next to my ear as he groans out again, his hot rush of breath on the side of my face, making me shudder. The big wolf continues to thrust against me, in time with the spurts from his cock, the look on his face now one of goofy pleasure, his long tongue drooping out, dripping onto my chest. His climax goes on for several seconds longer than mine, and I watch as he spurts over my stomach, over and over, until finally he collapses down against me, his fur damp with sweat. I wrap my arms around him as he heaves for breath, feeling his body expand and contract against mine. He nuzzles against my head, his stomach flattening against mine, against the mess we've made. We're going to have to take another shower. Even though I'm a bit out of breath, I'm kind of amused at how much Amicus is gasping, sounding like he just ran a marathon. He really put everything into that.
You.
I hold his head against mine, turning to kiss him on the cheek. Me?
You are incredible.
Thanks. You're really something too.
Good something?
A very good something. We lay there quietly for a moment, Amicus propping himself up a bit on his knees and elbows so his entire weight doesn't rest on top of me. How are your legs?
Burning. Probably the most intense exercise my thighs have ever been through. But it was worth it.
Again, we lay there quietly as Amicus just sort of strokes my hair.
I'm still terrified that this is a dream.
I hug him more tightly to my body, almost forcing him to fall on top of me. I'm here, and I'll be here in the morning when you wake up.
You'd better. Otherwise, I'll never forgive you.
His speech slurs a bit as he whispers into my ear. I look at him. So exactly how drunk are you? The wolf shrugs, slowly rolling off of me, cold air hitting the fluids on my stomach.
I'm fairly sober now. Shall we wash up?
He reaches out a paw, and I take it, slightly surprised as he pulls me up to be carried in his arms, like I'm his new bride. We go to the shower and wash up again, even more slowly than we did the first time. When we come back to the bed, Amicus continues to dote over me, hardly ever letting me go at any point. I can tell that he's legitimately worried that this isn't real, and I feel the same way. After everything that's happened, this doesn't seem possible. Eventually, I lay in the bed next to him, and he spoons me tightly against his body. He's extremely warm, but with no blankets and the cold air drifting down on top of us, it's perfect. Pretty soon, I'm drifting off to sleep, listening to the wolf's soft snores in my ear. Thankfully, I don't dream. Welcome to the After Reading, where this time I'm going to include my thoughts on episode 14 as well. So, like I said in the intro, at this point I think it's safe to assume that the entity Marco interacted with while his body was being ravaged by aviapox is one of the monitors Amicus had warned about, which suggests to me that both Amicus and Marco are in zero danger of a godlike smiting. That doesn't make them fully safe, though, since they could both be found out and punished by the Adastran Empire instead. I thought it was interesting how the monitor told Marco that contracting aviapox was not something the parents had foreseen. They seemed to be the ones who engineered Marco's kidnapping, after all, guiding Amicus not just to Earth, but specifically to Marco as well. So you would think that these godlike entities would take cross-contamination into account, especially since their own followers have standardized vaccination kits specifically designed for this purpose. Are the parents really that incompetent? I would argue that they're not, and that the truth of the matter is far more sinister. It's clear that Marco was chosen to fulfill a certain role in the parents' plan, the role of Mira. Though exactly what that entails, we're still not sure. The dramatic retellings of her story that we've seen so far are unreliable, so we can only guess at this point. One thing I think we can glean from the story, though, is that the parents are not afraid to manipulate their people by using their feelings against each other. So, that said, what was the last conversation Amicus and Marco had before the virus-induced coma? Marco insisted that he still needed to go home, but would be open to returning if Amicus could sort out the legality issue. A perfectly reasonable thing to want. And a potentially perfectly reasonable way for his fling with the himbo space wolf to come to an end. But what if that's not what the parents want? What if the parents want a guaranteed way to get the future emperor of Adastra to do exactly what they want him to do, no matter what? And what if they knew that the quickest way to get their best bargaining chip, Marco, to comply with their wishes was to give him the gift of traumatic bonding? And what's more traumatic than a dramatic, drawn-out death, followed by an unexpected resurrection? Considering the attraction they both had for each other, it would be reasonable to assume, after said dramatic death and recovery, Marco would be much more willing to give Amicus that steady relationship he's been asking for. And then, upon reuniting, by immediately consummating their relationship, their brains released all those love-bonding chemicals, which undoubtedly tightened their relationship like collars being cinched around their necks. Oh, and I also need to mention that alternate dream reality thing Marco had, the one where he managed to kill Amicus in the ship after his abduction. This could be another stellar piece of emotional manipulation from the parents. This is the place Marco first internally referred to Amicus, or at least his lifeless body, as his wolf. If the parents' plan was to arrange events so that they can lead Amicus and Marco around on a leash, then I'd say they succeeded. After Marco has recovered, for the second time we hear him internally refer to Amicus as his wolf, followed soon by his own proclamation of love for the Wolf Prince. And when you love someone, you'll do anything for them, even if it's not in your own best interest. Marco's brief observation that he feels different should also be noted. Whatever the parents did to fix his skin has left him feeling like he's not fully himself anymore, like he's been changed somehow. And this doesn't lead anywhere in these two parts, but it's something to keep in the back of our minds as future events unfold. But just because our boys are being manipulated by cosmic deities, that doesn't mean that their feelings aren't real. So on that note, kudos to Amicus for checking in with his lover as things begin to heat up, making sure that Marco is okay with what they're doing. I can't stress enough how important this sort of communication is. Always check in with your partner, especially if y'all are inexperienced with each other. Amicus gets a big ol' shiny gold star for that one. Lastly, there's Alex. I don't have much to say about him, except he's a shifty little fuck, and I hate him. And I really wish Marco would rub his two brain cells together to realize that that green kitty is bad news. So, after all that, what could possibly go wrong now? Find out in the next episode of Adastra. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a like, share it with fellow degenerates, and leave a comment for the almighty YouTube algorithm. Until next time, thanks for watching.